Okay, Dad, today is Wednesday, July 24th. And I'm going to throw maybe a curveball to start things off. We had a user ask a question. He said he was watching some of our videos and he said, "Yeah, World War III is unavoidable, but what does your dad know about UFOs?" I said, "Okay, I'll ask him." So asking the
I
real
know
questions here.
I know nothing about UFOs.
You
You
know
know,
something about them.
I know that it means unidentified flying objects. That's about it.
All right, I'll take a
I'll,
step.
okay,
We'll
I'll just
make
be
it
honest
bigger.
with you. For whatever reason, I've just never had an interest in UFOs. I say, maybe I don't know. Even if it turned out to be real, I just wouldn't be interested. For some reason, that's just is an issue that has never attracted the slightest bit of interest on my part. So I'm sorry. I
Okay.
have nothing to say about UFOs.
Well, I
I'm
guess it
sorry to
depends
the listener.
on.
I apologize to the listener. That's just
Well, I mean, I guess if it depends on what kind of proof that the UFO is real. If you see a little green man walk off of the spaceship, then you'd be a bit more excited, right? You'd find that interesting.
yeah. I don't know.
Well, it's probably not a good time because if he comes out and they say, "Take me to your leader," it might be
Yeah.
like,
Say
"Come back in 7 months, guys.
right.
Let's
Exactly.
hold on right now."
Exactly. It just seems like things that are happening on this planet are so wild. It would just be, yeah, it would just be sort of another crazy element in the mix. But yeah, I don't know. Like the UFO, the little green man would be down there as number four is weird phenomena that are happening now.
Okay, then what would you put as the top three weird phenomena happening right now? If we want to do a recap.
Yeah, well, I guess it would have to be what's going on in the White House. The dementia presidents, and then the DEI presidential candidate.
Yeah, it is so wild. Just when I think about, I don't want to dive too deep into politics because I know politics is it could be quite divisive and emotional and it can get inflamed. But it's you can't not talk about it, especially when you're talking about geopolitics and what's happening in the
Yeah.
world right now. So, okay, well, before we dive into geopolitics, just to do credence for this listener's question, do you believe in aliens?
Do I believe in them? Well, do I believe there are any aliens like orbiting the Earth or on this Earth? I would
Just
say,
aliens.
okay, just aliens, extraterrestrial intelligence somewhere in the universe. I think that is very possible. Just put it that way. I think certainly, it almost seems likely that this universe is so large that, I'm a theist to say that God created man, but that he made. Why can't I say that he couldn't have created something, an intelligent being somewhere else in the universe? I think that is quite possible, something he chose to do. So,
What about have they ever come to Earth?
I
And
don't
then
know.
I'll
I'm
stop.
sorry.
Then okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to our standard geopolitics stuff. So maybe we can just segue directly into what's happening in Ukraine because we haven't been talking about it. We've been focusing so much on what's happening in the White House here and domestic politics, and I think we're kind of forgetting about Gaza and Ukraine. But these conflicts are ongoing and they're
Yeah.
developing rapidly, and the genocide is continuing in Gaza.
Right.
The war
Yeah.
is continuing in Ukraine, and it seems like just some news updates saw is that Zelensky is saying we need to get a peace deal soon, ASAP. Sounds like he is realizing that they're in trouble. Maybe you can confirm that, elaborate on that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's made noises about negotiating, about a peace deal. But then when you scratch below the surface, you don't find any real change. I think he still is touting his peace plan, his so-called peace plan, which was the basis of, these recent so-called peace conferences, like the most recent one in Switzerland. But the peace plan is essentially a demand for unconditional surrender on the part of the Russians. And it's just absurd. He's clearly the losing side, and he's demanding the winning side to capitulate, to surrender, return all territories, pay hundreds of billions, if not trillions, in reparations, to hand over Putin, for some kind of war crimes trial. And this is obviously just pure fantasy. And he hasn't, at one point he says, I give up on that. That was silly. We can negotiate anything. Then I would say this is serious. Now, just the fact that he's making some noises, maybe that indicates that, okay, it takes a long time for these ships sometimes to turn around. He's not admitting to anything substantive, or proposing any substantive concession, but just the fact that he's talking about negotiations. It may be that it shows that he knows somewhere down the road he is going to have to enter into real negotiations. We're just not there yet.
So even now, he's still holding the position that
I haven't
Russia
seen
has
any
to leave all of them, including Crimea, and then pay reparations, and we have to get rid of Putin. That's still his position, even though
if you can find any evidence that he's actually willing to compromise on that, you give it to me. But I haven't seen it, and it's just like
I just saw a headline saying that Zelensky wants peace ASAP.
Yeah, well, he'll say things like that, but then his peace is Russia surrenders. Yeah, that's not peace. They're just so far apart that there's really nothing. I don't see any negotiations whatsoever in the near future, unless the front collapses entirely. It is beginning to collapse, and if there's just a real dramatic collapse, and then all of a sudden, the floodgates open and the Russian forces drive to the Dnieper, then we may see something. But I think in the meantime, we're not going to see anything.
Do you think Zelensky's just delusional, or
that's what his high-level aides told Time magazine last fall. The guy's delusional. I don't think he really understands what's going on.
Time magazine published that? Saying that his aides saying that he's delusional?
Yeah, again, quoting his aides who work with him closely. He says you can't tell him. You can't, he doesn't want to hear about what's really happening on the front. He still seems to believe that they just need a few more Leopard tanks and F-16s, and then they can drive all the way to the Sea of Azov, and then the Russians will surrender or something.
Wow.
Obviously there's been a shift of opinion within Ukraine. There was some poll that came out that got a lot of attention that said 44% of Ukrainians are willing to support negotiations. Now, which is a significant increase from before. Now, when you look at, what they mean by that, though, it's not quite so encouraging. Still 55% of Ukrainians think that Ukraine should demand, return of all the territory, should not, accept anything less. They get Crimea and everything back, right? That's 55%. So some of those 44% that are say that they favor negotiations clearly are, say negotiations meaning, maybe the way that Zelensky understands, and we just tell the Russians, give it all back, right? But there has been a shift in opinion still, because if there is something like, I believe it's now 32% of Ukrainians are in favor of surrendering or, conceding some territory.
And actually, I would like to point out,
and that is an increase from the past. That like back in 2022 was 20%. I think actually 10%, and then like 2023 20%. So it's a fairly significant shift. It's still a minority. And then go ahead.
I was just going to say that poll that you're quoting that said 32% of Ukrainians are open for territorial loss in order to achieve peace. That poll was taken in May, and so it's been a couple months, and really I think we've really seen the real increase in June and July.
Right.
This one casualty numbers have been skyrocketing.
After Avdiivka, but
Avdiivka, right?
Yeah, but before Ocheretino, or maybe Ocheretino was just beginning, and then and certainly before Toretsk, which have been major breakthroughs.
This poll was taken in before these major developments.
And then I think you also need to point out that it was done over the phone. And if you're living in Ukraine and somebody calls you up and asks you what you think about whether or not you think it's acceptable to concede this territory to the Russians, I think a lot of people are going to have second thoughts, like I better just lie
for
because
sure,
who knows?
for sure,
right? You know,
even if they call me here in the States, I'm a little, sketched out.
I think it's quite possible that actually the public sentiment for conceding territory is much stronger than we just can't know. We can't know for sure.
Yeah. Well,
but in any case, it does show an increase. More people are willing to say that over the phone.
Right, so that's that's definitely an encouraging sign. But it's just an example of just how desperate things are getting. We've talked before about how we see all these videos of the what are they called, the Ukrainian secret police? I forget the.
I think it's the TCC. Yeah, it's not actually the secret police. There's a special department that has the job of press ganging people into the service. They forcibly conscripting them.
Right. Anyways, we've seen a lot of those videos of them pulling people off the streets, taking them out of cafes and buses, out of their homes. And there was a video that once came out a week ago or so of a woman, a wife of somebody that was press gang, that was conscripted, that set herself on fire in front of self-immolated, in front of the recruitment office in just protest. That shows you the level of just how upset people are. If women are setting themselves on fire because you're taking their husbands or their sons to die, that it's bad. Right. And so I feel like you can be pretty delusional like Zelensky, but it's gotta eventually he's gonna have a problem. He has a problem in his hand. He's gonna get overthrown. It can't go on much longer. People are desperate and in a bad situation right now. So yeah, it's scary just to think about something like that. If someone's self-immolating.
Right.
But it's crazy just thinking. We have quite the gang, quite the crew. There we got Zelensky, who is delusional, as admitted by his own aides, and we got Netanyahu, who's this bloodthirsty war criminal committing a genocide, and then we got Biden, who is has dementia, doesn't know where he is, can't put his pants on. Like this is kind of the symbol of the West,
right? And this is actually it's very worrying. It's actually Biden said that his decision to drop out of the race frees him up to focus on the most important issues, which are the Middle East and Ukraine.
Dealing with his delusional dementia guys very now.
So last time you expressed concerns about what Biden might do, I think we ought to be very concerned. He thinks that this is, I guess, where he's going to establish his legacy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like what I was saying. I think there's a good chance he might just start chucking Hail Marys, because his legacy right now is that he is the president that everybody says has dementia, and he refuses to believe it, and has been an absolute failure and had the most abysmal public debate performance in history, televised around the world. That's got to sting. We've all done embarrassing things in our lives. Right. But that one, that's up there at the top.
I mean, no, I do embarrassing things on this program here, but it's not in front of the whole world. It's not, 200 million viewers or whatever.
Right. And everybody's, making memes and talking about you pooping your pants and you're supposed to be the most powerful man in the world. It's, that might make somebody snap. And especially if your mind's not that strong already, he might try to really escalate things. So it is scary.